Good morning, folks. What's today's topic on Coffee and Questions? I had a friend at a garage sale. He came across a bucket of old wrenches. The guy wanted like $5 or something for them. Picked them up just to have as welding and practice welding art projects and playing around. He gave me a call and, he told me about, what he got. They're just old wrenches that were stripped out. Not really much good for anything. It's just the steel he was after to, play around with projects in his MIG welder. And I told him, hey, look, I got a couple of pictures, and I'm going to do a small video real quick, explaining to you what I told him. I go, well, one of the things you could do maybe with these old wrenches, and, your kids or, your son or whatever, it depends on their age, because some tools I understand are dangerous and they require, you to be supervising what they're doing. But I go, you can make can openers, you can make drawer handles, you can do different things with them. And you can make, like cord hangers or tool hangers. And we were discussing them, and he got a little, thinking about like, well, gee, how do you go about doing that? And I said, I'll throw up some pictures and I'll give you quick descriptions. And I texted them to him off of my phone, and I gave him a few examples of what he could do with them. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the screen here in a sec, and I'm going to show you each one of several different ways that you can repurpose, these old wrenches and tools maybe into something that's kind of playful and fun to do with your kids, or maybe it's just something that you can use out in your garage. So it's just up to you on what you want to do, but let me change the picture. Let's get right to it. Here we go. Now, step one here is you're going to have a way to get that steel hot in order to bend it easy. So let's say you have a vise, you put it in the vise and you heat it up, and you go ahead and you bend this thing a little bit more than 90 degrees. And then you can use a crescent wrench or channel locks or anything that you have to grab it, and you can twist it like you showed here in the picture just above my head, and that'll create that bend in it, and that'll make your can opener. Now the next step would be drilling the holes. Now you can use a hand drill. I've got a drill press. I've also got a countersink bit. You don't have to use that. If you use the countersink bit though, it'll mean when you add that screw to it and you screw it in, it'll come down flush with the metal of the wrench, but you don't have to do that. So this is a fast, easy, like little project, your tip of the day maybe, that you can do with an old wrench and have a little bit of fun. And the kids will think it's pretty cool. I mean, the part of it that you don't want them getting involved in maybe is the oxyacetylene. It depends on how old they are, of course. But this is a fun, easy project. Doesn't really require a lot of tools or a large level skill-wise. Now let's take a look at the one over here on the right. The one here on the right, somebody went ahead and they used the old wrenches and they just bent them like you see here, and they're making some kind of hangers. And you can position these throughout your shop. I mean, maybe to hang different tools on, or any kind of hanging device for cords or whatever else you want to use, which I thought was a pretty good idea of repurposing these old wrenches before you just throw them out or discard them. Maybe they're no good anymore. I mean, that's fine. And you can figure out a way of welding, and you can make different art projects, of course, but this was focused, the video here was just focused on making can openers. And on the case on the far right, I went ahead and put it up here because this is somebody that repurposed them to use as hangers. So there's a question part of things. I was on one of the forums where somebody was making quite a few of these, and somebody said, well, what good are they? Well, I just explained, it's just a fun, easy project, something to goof around with your kids, the can opener part of it. Now, the hangers, that's a different story. The hangers are, it depends on you and your shop. I mean, what you may or may not be able to use them for. I had a buddy of mine that took some old wrenches. They were a little bit longer. He bent them like you see here on the right, and he welded them onto his welding cart. And he uses them to drape his cords and so forth over, and his welding torch, his MIG welding torch. So he used it for that, which was a good idea. And, there are other uses, I suppose. Let me keep reading here real quick. Question is can you paint them? Yeah. The friend of mine on the welding cart thing, I mean, he wiped them down with acetone, which most metal, after I've cleaned it up with a wire wheel or what have you, I always wipe them down with acetone before painting them. In his case, on his welding cart, it was painted a John Deere green, so he painted the wrenches a John Deere green also, but you can pretty much paint them any color that you want. So the answer is, yeah, you can paint them, and the paint will stick to them. Just make sure you do the prep work correctly before you try to apply the paint. And somebody made the comment on here that they bent the wrenches and they used them on the inside of a utility trailer. and they just went ahead and they coated them with Herculiner because they had used Herculiner, which is a bed coating material. It's like tar, liquid tar. I've got a whole video on that if you want to go back and research and see what it is. But anyway, he coated those to rust proof them, and he used them, like I said, on a utility trailer for ropes, or I don't know, whatever he was trying to secure, a tarp or something, which was a good idea. Like I said, it's repurposing tools instead of just throwing them in the trash. All right, change the picture because somebody asked the question, can you use them for drawer handles? Well, yeah, and they wanted an example of how you could do it. Now, I found a couple of them out on the web, a couple examples. This is one right here where you could take these old Pittsburgh wrenches or whatever wrenches you have laying around, and you can actually tack weld these sleeves, and they're threaded, and you can buy bolts. Now, any hardware store or even Home Depot and Lowe's has similar kind of hardware that you can root around and find these sleeves. Now, what he did is, because he didn't want anything to show, he tack welded the sleeves on the back side. Like I said, they're threaded, and a lot of them come in packages with bolts already. And then all you have to do on your drawer, drill a hole, you space, mark, drill your holes, line them up, screw it in from the back side. Now, I would use washers if I were you on the back side, on the inside of the drawer, and then you can secure these down, and you've got yourself some pretty cool looking drawer handles for your garage. So this is one idea. Let me throw up another picture here if you're interested in using them to make handles for drawers, cupboards, or whatever in your garage. It's a good idea. Again, it's repurposing. So let me change the picture. I'll show you another example. Now, here's a more simplistic example because you don't have to get those threaded inserts and nuts. You can just simply drill holes in these wrenches after you've figured out your spacing and how you're going to line them up with your drawers, and you just use simple nuts and bolts if you wanted to. And on the back side, you can use nuts again and secure the nut on the back side and the nut on the front side and create that tightening that'll hold it. And then the threads, of course, can go through the drawer, and you can do the same thing on the back side. Or what I like to do is, when I've made some things like this similar out of railroad ties and stuff, for handles and knobs, is I use those sleeves. I don't use them all the time, but those threaded sleeves, and they come in packages, like I said, with the nuts. It just makes things so much easier. You just have to be careful when you're welding that you have your welder set correctly, because you can burn through those sleeves like in a fraction of a second and ruin them. It takes a couple of times maybe to get the learning curve, but just be careful when you're doing them, or you can use some other way, if you want to secure them to the back, but I think welding them is actually the better way to do it. Just tack weld it, and there you have it. The question is, do you have to weld them, on the back side, or can you use epoxy? Yeah, I suppose you could use epoxy. Go ahead and try it. That's not something I've done, but it's a good idea. But I would use something made by like Gorilla Glue or JB Weld. Now JB Weld would be a good choice if you want to try like an epoxy to, attach them to the back and then just let it set up real well. That would probably work good. I haven't tried it, but that's a good idea. And thanks for the comment. The question is, what about the finish on them? I would just leave them alone. It's for the garage. Now, if you wanted, like I said, you could use any kind of paint that you wanted to. Just clean them up, wipe them with acetone, and paint them. Your other option is, if you leave them alone and you like the way the rustic look is, but you want to have some kind of protection over it, just get some of that Rust-Oleum, clear gloss or semi-gloss, and just shoot it. And then you have a protective, finish over the top of them. And if you really want something like that, you could do it that way. Okay, this has just been a short video on what you can do on repurposing old wrenches. You can make a bottle opener, you can make drawer handles, whatever you want out of this stuff. You can make hangers for hanging tools, cords, things like that, your welding cart, electrical cords, whatever you want to do. It's your choice. You tweak these to however you want and have a good time playing around, doing it. But instead of just throwing them out, you might have another purpose for them out in your garage. Anyway, quick tip of the day. I'm the Home Handyman. I hope you folks enjoy these quick videos, and I try to get right to the point with, no padding, no long intros. Give me a thumbs up, click subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.